People think they know what a dying man wants. They assume he wants comfort. They assume he wants reassurance. They assume he wants someone to tell him that everything will be okay, that there's meaning to it all, that some beautiful light waits on the other side. That's completely wrong. At least it was for me. On February 15th, 1988, I lay in a hospital bed at UCLA Medical Center. My kidneys had failed. The cancer had spread. The doctors offered me dialysis, one more round, one more attempt to squeeze a few extra weeks out of this body. And I said no. I refused. And do you know what my final words were? The last thing I said before slipping away? I'd hate to die twice. It's so boring. That's it. That's what I said. No profound poetry, no desperate prayers, no last-minute conversion to some comforting belief system. Just that. Dying is boring. I'd hate to do it twice. Now, most people hear that and they think I was being flippant. They think it was a joke. Classic Feynman humor, the physicist who played bongos and cracked safes, making one final wisecrack. But they're missing everything. Those words reveal exactly what I believed about the universe, about consciousness, about death, about everything. And once you understand what I actually meant, you'll never think about your own existence the same way again. Let me start with what most people believe, because I want to be fair about it. Most people believe that death is either terrifying or transcendent. Either you face the void, the absolute nothing, the complete annihilation of self, and you're supposed to be afraid. Or you believe something awaits you, heaven, reincarnation, cosmic consciousness, some continuation of the story. Both positions assume that death is dramatic, that it's the biggest moment of your life, that it means something profound. I spent my entire career studying the universe. I worked on quantum electrodynamics. I helped build the atomic bomb. I watched the first nuclear explosion at Trinity, saw that fireball rise into the New Mexico sky, and you know what I thought about? I thought about the physics. I calculated the yield in my head while everyone else was stunned into silence. And after a lifetime of looking at the universe as deeply as any human being can look, I arrived at a conclusion that most people find disturbing. The universe doesn't care. Now hold on. Don't misunderstand me. This is not nihilism. This is not despair. This is not some bitter old man shaking his fist at an empty sky. This is something far more interesting, far more liberating, far more beautiful than any of that. When I said dying was boring, I meant it literally. The process of dying, the physical mechanics of it, is not interesting. It's just chemistry slowing down, organs failing, systems shutting off one by one. There's no drama in it. There's no meaning built into the atoms as they stop doing their work. But here's the critical thing that changes everything. The absence of built-in meaning is not the same as the absence of meaning. The universe doesn't hand you meaning. You don't find it hiding behind the equations. It's not waiting for you at the end of some cosmic treasure hunt. Meaning is something you create. It's something you make with your own hands, your own mind, your own choices. And that's not a tragedy. That's the most wonderful thing I ever discovered. Let me tell you about something that happened to me once, years before I was sick. I was sitting in a cafeteria at Cornell, just staring at my food, completely depressed. This was after working on the Manhattan Project, after watching what we built get dropped on 2 cities, after seeing what physics could do when humans decided to use it for destruction. I couldn't work. I couldn't think. I felt like physics had betrayed me, or I had betrayed physics. And then someone threw a plate in the air, just a student horsing around, tossing a dinner plate across the room, and I watched it spin. I noticed that the wobble and the spin had a certain relationship, a certain ratio. The red Cornell medallion on the plate went around faster than the wobble. And I thought, that's interesting. Why is that? What's the relationship? I worked it out. I did the calculations purely for fun, purely because the spinning plate had caught my attention and I wanted to understand it. Nobody was paying me to think about plates. It wasn't going to win any prizes. It was completely, absolutely, magnificently useless. And that calculation led me to another, which led me to another, which eventually connected to the work on quantum electrodynamics that won me the Nobel Prize. The plate didn't mean anything. The universe didn't put that plate there for me to see. There was no cosmic plan. But I chose to find it interesting. I chose to follow that thread. I created the meaning. And it changed my life. That's what I mean when I say the universe doesn't care, but you should. Now let me tell you what I really think happens when you die, and this is where most people get uncomfortable. I don't think anything happens. Not to you, not to your consciousness, not to your sense of self. You stop. That's it. The atoms that made up your body continue on, get recycled into other things, become part of trees and rocks and other people and distant stars eventually. But you, the particular pattern that called itself by your name, that pattern dissolves. It doesn't go anywhere because there's nowhere for patterns to go. They just stop being maintained. Is that frightening? Most people think it should be, but I never understood why. Before I was born, I didn't exist for 13 billion years. The universe got along perfectly fine without me. Stars formed and exploded. Galaxies collided. Life emerged on countless planets, probably. And I wasn't there for any of it. I didn't suffer from not existing. I didn't miss anything. There was no me to miss it. Death is just a return to that state, the state of not being a particular pattern anymore. And if that state wasn't bad before, why would it be bad after? What I find far more interesting, far more worthy of attention, is this brief flicker in between. This tiny window where the atoms happen to arrange themselves in just the right way to become conscious, to ask questions, to feel wonder, to love other arrangements of atoms, to look up at the night sky and realize that the stars are nuclear furnaces and the light reaching your eyes has traveled for millions of years just to land on your retina. That's not boring. That's the opposite of boring. That's the most interesting thing that has ever happened in the history of the universe, and it's happening right now, inside your skull, as you listen to these words. I'll tell you what does bother me about dying, since we're being honest here. It's not the end of consciousness. I've made my peace with that. What bothers me is all the things I didn't get to learn. I remember sitting with my doctor, getting the news that the cancer was terminal, and my first thought was, damn, I really wanted to see what they figured out about quarks. I wanted to know if they'd find the Higgs boson. I wanted to understand consciousness better. I wanted to see what biology would discover about how the brain actually works. The universe is so vast, so deep, so endlessly full of things to discover, and I only got to scratch the tiniest part of the surface. 80 years or so of scratching, and I barely made a dent. That's what bothers me. Not that I'm going to stop existing, but that existence contains so much more than any one person could ever hope to explore. But even that isn't really sad. It's just true. And I decided a long time ago that I'd rather know true things that feel uncomfortable than believe comfortable things that aren't true. So when I said dying was boring, what I really meant was this. The physical process of shutting down is not interesting. It's just machinery running out of power. The profound questions, the interesting questions, those are all about life, not death. How does consciousness emerge from matter? Why does the universe have mathematical structure? How did something come from nothing? What is the relationship between observer and observed in quantum mechanics? Why do the fundamental constants have the values they do? Those questions are fascinating. Dying isn't. Dying is just the end of asking questions. And I'd hate to do it twice because once is already enough of an interruption. I had things I wanted to figure out, mysteries I wanted to chase, problems I wanted to solve. Death is just the moment when you have to put down the puzzle and walk away even though you haven't finished it. Here's what I want to leave you with, and I mean this sincerely. You are made of atoms that were forged in the cores of dying stars. The calcium in your bones came from a supernova. The iron in your blood was created in the heart of a star that exploded before our sun was born. You are quite literally the universe looking at itself, the universe becoming conscious of its own existence, the universe asking questions about its own nature, and that will end. For you, for me, for everyone who has ever lived or ever will live, the pattern will dissolve, the questions will stop, the consciousness will cease. But right now, in this moment, you're here. You can think, you can wonder, you can feel the weight of existence pressing against your awareness. You can choose what to do with this brief, improbable, magnificent window of time. That's not boring. That's the most interesting thing in the universe. So, my final words, I'd hate to die twice, it's so boring, were not a joke. They were a statement of values. Dying is the absence of discovery. Living is the presence of it. I chose to focus on the living part, right up until the machinery couldn't support it anymore. And now I want to ask you something that might keep you thinking for a long time. If meaning isn't built into the universe, if you have to create it yourself, what are you going to create? What questions are you going to chase? What spinning plates are you going to notice and follow wherever they lead? You have this one brief window, this one flicker of consciousness between two infinite stretches of non-existence. What are you going to do with it? Sit with that, turn it over, and tell me what you think.